Welcome to the Home Team Sacramento podcast. I'm Josh Takimoto, and today we actually have our first repeat guest, coach at Carnegie, or wrestling coach at Carnegie Middle School. He's the Positive Coaching Alliance trainer. He's also the host of the Positive Sports Report for San Juan Unified. Coach Dana Smith. What's going on, Coach?
Not much. How are you? Good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. Man, that might have been one of my rougher intros. I really stumbled over that one, but that's okay because you're a repeat guest, so people should know who you are at this point.
Right.
So how's everything going?
Ways, we don't know, but
that's a good point.
It's good.
That's a good point.
Good. I'll take either though.
All right. Hey, I'm good with that. Yeah. Hey, it's always fun. Like, we always love having you on. And so, you're one of our guests that we enjoy talking to, but we also don't want to constantly bug you. So I try to wait a little time, and then we're definitely appreciative that you're willing to come back so soon after your first appearance.
No, I always love being on with you. If imitation is the best form of flattery, you should be very flattered, because I copy a lot of stuff that you do when it comes to podcasting. I steal your ideas all the time.
Oh. Hey, I'll take that. I appreciate that. Right. Yeah, I try to hide all the bad stuff. So I'm going to try to keep, now that I know that, I won't show any of the bad stuff. That way I don't send you down the wrong direction.
I don't think that's possible.
All right. Well, that's good. So what's new, Coach? Before we jump into, some of the questions I have for you, what's new? I mean, I forgot exactly when we last recorded, but I don't think it's quite been a year yet.
Yeah, we're always right around this time though, every year, it seems like, but I think it's been about a year, a little more maybe, but yeah, close to it.
Man, time flies.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, new, I think, I think it really feels like we're kind of getting back to normal. I know, like, especially with wrestling this year, I felt more like, we had kids coming back, had kids from our youth program coming in, and parents that I knew ahead of time. So it felt a little bit more like a normal start. And that's just been a blast this year. I've been coaching for a long time. This is my 24th year with this wrestling team. And I still love it. People ask, hey, when are you going to hang it up? It's like, I'm not done. As long as my body holds up and I can keep getting on the mat and showing some moves, I'm in, because it's just, it's a joy to coach. I just absolutely love it. You mentioned the podcast. So we have a new little podcast going with the district, kind of trying to promote what we do with middle school sports and what our mission is there as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's, I love that you're doing that. And I'll say this too, before I start in on my questions. You might be the only person that started as many podcasts as I have, because I think when we first started, having conversations with you, was the Skronko podcast. And then I think you started the Positive Way podcast, and now it's the Positive Sports podcast. So I don't feel as bad. I'm going to tell my wife, like, there's other people that start just as many podcasts, because sometimes I'm like, hey, I have an idea. And she's like, if you start another podcast, this might be it for us.
What's funny is, well, one, it is a little bit addicting, the planning, the interviewing people, editing. It's very interesting, and you always feel like you can get better. So that's a fun part of it. But, honestly, this idea, it came to me driving to work one morning, and I got on email and emailed our superintendent and some people in charge of athletics and of our division, and said I wanted to do this. And literally within 10 minutes, I got an email back from our superintendent saying, I've already contacted communications, you're ready to roll, just let them know what you need. And that's an awesome thing when you have a district that will back you like that and helps you out. I send stuff to our communications office, and they put it on social media and get that part of it taken care of. So it's been a lot of fun. The one thing I've learned is start small and don't bite off more you can chew. So the once a month thing is doable for sure. Yeah. And getting guests and me finding time to record and get things edited. So it's been a really good experience.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you said it too. Not that this is a podcasting episode, but I think what you just said applies to anything in life, because that's what I had the chance. I don't know if you knew this. I had the chance to talk to a couple of groups of kids at Bella Vista High School this past year for their, or no, it was actually this year.
Mater.
Yeah, I know. I knew there was a connection there.
Yeah.
And, they had a career day. And so they asked me to come in and speak about podcasting. I'm like, I don't make any money doing this. And it's like, I can talk to him
Right.
about it. And I know of ways that, people do make money, but I just said, just so you know, I'm not the example of that, but I do love it. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Would love to have you. And that's one of the thing I told every class is like, if you want to do it, the main thing is you have to be consistent. It doesn't mean every week, doesn't mean twice a week, whatever you feel comfortable with and you can commit to and feel comfortable with. That's the main thing. So like, I love the fact that you said that, because I think it's not just a podcasting thing. It really is anything that, any life lesson. I think when you commit to something, you got to follow through. But part of that is before you commit, knowing how much you can really handle, because that's going to make the commitment a lot easier.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. But and I'll say this too. I feel like San Juan seems to be really, I don't know if this is the same with all districts, but they seem to be really into the podcasting thing, because I know Kevin Bracey, who, is part of this home team thing that we're doing. He was on a podcast for, I think, the San Juan's Unified Students podcast or something. It's ran by a
Yeah.
student.
I want to say that's fairly new, but I could be totally wrong. I know what you're referring to though. Yeah. I know that the students have a podcast going as well.
Which is awesome. So it seems like San Juan's really kind of diving into that space, which I think is really smart.
Yeah, we really have some good media programs out there. The high schools are fantastic. I've been in Del Campo's television broadcast studio. It's absolutely amazing. It's very new, and the teacher that runs that program was at Carnegie at one time. But it's fabulous. San Juan's had a program going over there with Tom Sullivan for a while,
Sure.
who is another BB alum. Played football with him, so he's over there doing that program. So San Juan's really does a great job with their media programs for students, part of their
Yeah.
career training.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. So did you like, what made you decide that you wanted to do the positive sports things? I apologize if I missed this, but was this your idea and you brought it to them, or did they say,
Yeah.
hey, we know you're a podcast guy, so we're gonna, try to get the most out of you with this thing? Like, who brought it to the table and why did it start?
Well, I brought it to the table. And actually, Darren Kitchen, who was the principal of Bella Vista at one time and who's at our district office in the secondary division, Garrett and I had interviewed him for the Skronko podcast at one time. So he was kind of familiar with the work that we'd done before. But for me, it almost goes back to when I was graduating from the program at Mizzou in positive coaching and talking to Dr. Orr, who ran the program, letting him know I was going to go to work for Positive Coaching Alliance. And his response was, you want to preach the gospel in a non-religious, a sports way and a positive coaching way. And I said, absolutely. And it's just the idea of, if you're on this mission to build positive coaching in youth sports, then you have to communicate the mission and what the vision is that you're trying to accomplish. You have to bring people on board so they know what the expectations are and what you're trying to do. And once you do that and you prove yourself, people jump in, because it's just obvious how good positive coaching is for our athletes and for our programs. As human beings, absolutely. And on the other end of it, of performance, the research shows us that athletes that are in positive coaching atmospheres perform better. They reach their peaks more because they're not afraid to make mistakes. They're going to work outside the box. They're going to take chances because they know mistakes are okay, right? We're going to learn from those mistakes and we're going to get better. So if we can sell that, get that mission out there to people, they're going to buy into it. And honestly, the people that don't buy into it, they tend to fade away from the program because they don't see what they believe in. If it's that win at all costs kind of mentality or my kid only mentality, they tend to kind of back away from your program. And that's part of the reason why you want that mission out there. So you're keeping it positive and you don't have negative people tearing down what you're trying to build.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so a couple of thoughts. One, and I don't think I've asked you this before, but when someone goes into, a program like you did at Mizzou for positive coaching, is the main goal to get to an organization like Positive Coaching Alliance? Like, is that kind of the end goal, or like what other avenues would someone take? Because I'm sure, like I've always talked about on this podcast, when athletes get to that point where they have to kind of hang it up and not compete anymore, and they can't pursue that next level. I've always said like there's opportunities to stay close to the sport without actually competing in the sport. And so maybe there's someone listening to this thinking, man, I would love to get into that positive coaching world. But when someone goes into that field, what directions, what avenues are they hoping to get out of that?
Well, first speaking for myself, it was just to improve my coaching and what I was trying to
Sure.
do.
Sure.
We were already partnered with Positive Coaching Alliance, and I'd worked with their material a lot as I started coaching. They kind of came into being right as I started coaching. So it was happenstance that came together. But to me, in looking for a master's program, I wanted to do something that was going to benefit my work. So doing the research and finding this program and getting into it, it was just way more than I could have ever imagined. And of course, it's a lot of coaches. It's a lot of athletic directors. It is people who work in athletics at a college level, especially in like recruiting and PR and that kind of stuff. But it's also a lot of business people, because it's leadership, right? It's how do you bring out the best in people? So when we went back to go through commencement, we had a dinner party, and it was Garrett Lane and myself, so two coaches, and then two business people that were there. One from fairly local from Kansas, and then another gentleman who had come over from India. So he was in the online program with us, and he and his friends were all traveling across the country and making a stop to go through commencement. So it was very interesting in how people were applying that approach of positive coaching to different areas of life. So it's really open to a lot of uses if you're in leadership, especially, and just getting the best out of people. And coaches are leaders, ADs are leaders, business management, you're a leader. So it all comes down to the same thing. It's just how you're applying it.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when like someone goes into, because I mean, imagine sometimes when I think of like a positive coaching alliance, I just automatically assume that they're all great people that want to learn how to communicate to the best of their abilities and communicate positive things. And I'm sure that they are all great people. But I imagine that when it comes to coaching, you're not getting all the same style of coach. I'm sure you get some that are a little louder, some that are more low key. So what is that like? I mean, do you find that when people go into like a positive coaching alliance training program, do they all like, how do they manage all those different personalities? Because you can still be a positive coach even if you tend to be, you know, a little bit louder or maybe more aggressive, and you can still be a positive coach if you're more laid back and low key. But like I said, just like my very general concept of what's being done there, I just kind of assume, oh yeah, I'm sure they're all the same kind of coach, but obviously that's not the reality of it at all. So what is that whole thing like, seeing this mix of coaches learn how to be positive coaches?
Well, I would say it's not what volume you're using or how you're putting it across. It's what you're saying.
Sure.
Right. It's your body language when you're saying it. It's the expression on your face when you're saying it. It's what you're saying and how you're saying it. So yeah, you can be that super energetic personality and do that. You can be that loud coach and do that. You can be a more laid back coach and do that. I think it just comes down to however you're expressing it, that your athletes, your assistant coaches, the parents, the people in your organization know that you care about the people that you're working with, that you care about those athletes, that you love them, and you're there because of that passion and trying to help them become better people, right? Just growing as human beings. We're just doing it through athletics, right? The athletes love what they're doing, love their teammates, and want to be a part of that. And we can use that to get those life lessons across and help them become better people. So it's more what you're saying than how you're saying it.
Sure. Do you, you know, I was going to add a couple questions about parents, but I feel like we've already talked about that before. But before I forget, on your upcoming episode of your podcast, and I can't remember the young lady's name, but you have a wrestler that was one of your former wrestlers, which I'm excited to hear that episode of the podcast. I think that's going to be really interesting. But do you have a lot of people that, like, a lot of students that come back to visit your program? Because I've always felt like that was a really cool thing when you saw that happen for programs. And I think it says a lot about a program when athletes are wanting to come back to visit, because there's a piece of them there. There's a piece of their a really crucial part of their development that happened on that field or on that court or on that mat. And so it's cool when you see that. And it's always a sad thing to me when you don't see it, when you see a program where they're like, I'm never going to touch that field again. Like I never want to be there again. So for you, I guess two questions here. One, how often do your former athletes come back? And then two, how much does that mean to you as a coach? And then how much does that mean to a program?
They come back a lot. And, um, Alex Hedrick, who's another wrestler that we had on our program, she's also number 2 in the country, wrestled off for a world team spot. She's in town. She comes in. Her cousin is on my team right now. And just one day she showed up at practice. I go, do you want to coach or you want to, wrestle and work with Will? And she's like, I'm here. I'm going to work with Will. And then over the summer, she came in and did a whole day of our summer camp. She just happened to be in town and came in and we said, we're throwing the agenda away, do what you want to do. And she worked the whole day with the kids. And the high school kids are around. We had a dual meet this year, and the whole high school team, they ran over to Carnegie from Bella Vista and sat in bleachers on our stage and cheered our team on. So they do that kind of stuff all the time. Jennifer, in fact, we were talking after we did the interview about her, really wanting, she lives in Pennsylvania, and her really wanting to get back. And I said, the door's always open. And she said, when I'm back, I will definitely get over there and get in. As far as the value of that to me, that is the value of coaching, besides the incredibly high salary that I make. Other than
Of
that,
course. Yeah.
right. Other than that, no, you do it for that. It's those relationships. I've told you before on the podcast that I get more out of it than I think my athletes get from me. That may or may not be true, but I think it is. I think I've been blessed in the support I've been given from, administrators at site level, at the district level, from our program and our ties with Bella Vista. The mentorship I fell into with Mike Lee when he was a coach at Bella Vista. I've just been really, really lucky and luckily smart enough to attach to that and realize how great that could be. And it's been just a complete blessing to me to have that part of my career.
Yeah. That support element of, either teaching or coaching is such a huge part of it. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into this, but my former co-host of the Character Combine podcast, Deb, who's still my co-host for my other podcast, but she's obviously a teacher at a high school, and she's talked before about the lack of support sometimes is really frustrating. And I know all districts are different, all schools are different, but some of the stories that she tells, it's like, man, it seems like it's brutal sometimes. And then hearing, yourself or some of the other people I know that are teachers, it seems like it's a complete 180. That support just makes a world of difference for the people around you. And it seems like it just frees up a coach or a teacher to really focus on the thing that they love doing. And if you don't have that support, then your mind is going in all these other directions and you're not able to, it kind of sucks away at the passion that you have for the thing that you're doing. So, like, I love hearing that you're in a position, in a situation where there is that support,
Yeah. And, we haven't, he's not new as being a principal, but he's new to our school. And when he first started his career and I was starting out coaching, he was actually a wrestling coach too. And we've competed against each other, so to speak, but just the trust that's there, because he knows me, he knows what I'm about, he knows what our program is about. And, he'll show up in the doorway and watch practice for a little bit on his way out at the end of the day. And that's huge for the kids. What does that say about your program when the principal on his way off campus takes the time to come down and stand in the wrestling room and watch your practice for a little bit
yeah,
with a big smile on his face? It's huge. It's little things like that. And what we can get back from kids just because they know you're connected, they know you care, because you care enough to check in on what they're doing outside of the classroom. Because sometimes our athletes, they're not there for school. And if we can get them there for school because of wrestling or baseball or football or tennis or band or theater, whatever the case may be, then we got to use it and get them engaged so they have the benefit of that education later on.
absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, if you had to coach another sport, like if all of a sudden like wrestling just disappeared and you had to coach another sport, what sport would you coach?
Probably baseball or football.
There you go.
Honestly, my original intent in my career was to be a high school teacher and coach football. And I'm
Oh,
not a
that's
high school
right. I
teacher and
forgot
I
about
don't
that.
coach football.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like coaching's coaching, but those football guys, that's a time intensive sport. It really is. But I think it's one of those things where it's addicting too, when it's such a chess game to be a coach in football.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting thing. I got to do that for a year after I graduated from high school, and it was a blast. It's what made me want to be a coach, was doing that just for that year. So
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, coach. I've always said coaching football is just another animal because of how much time and studying and everything that goes into it. And it is funny because all these years of doing sports podcasting, like I have, every time I talk to a football coach, at some point, there's always a mention of how much of a saint their wife is,
right,
and their wife's like, yeah, I am,
yeah, yeah,
because this is a wild sport.
yeah. I think it shows when you're really into what you're doing as coaching and with your players. That's part of your family.
Yeah,
It really is. It changes every year, but it's so embedded in what you do and what you're about and your DNA that you better have a partner that understands that, and that's what they love about you, is your passion for those things and what you're trying to do, because it can be
yeah.
tough.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's not going to work out well
Right.
if both sides aren't very aware of the time commitment and kind of willing to roll with it. So yeah. Now, I know you live in the same community as you teach and coach. And we've talked about that before and the value of that. But how often do you see former students? I mean, you've been coaching for a while, like former students, former athletes. I mean, are you constantly just running into people?
Um, Quite a bit. It was,
Yeah.
it's funny. My twin sister, who she moved back into town. They lived in Santa Rosa, I don't know, almost 30 years. And they ended up moving back into town. And literally, probably the first 10 times I went somewhere with her, I ran into either a former parent of a student or a student, and she's like, "Do you know everybody in this town?" I said, "I've been teaching for a long time. So yes, I know a lot of people." But yeah, you really do. In fact, I had not last year on my birthday, not last November, but the year before, um, I had a tattoo done on my birthday,
Oh,
and just
nice.
like went into the place, said, "This is what I want done. Set me up with an artist, and I'll come back into my birthday." And I
Yeah.
come back in there, and I'm walking back with the artist, and she goes, "Do you teach at Carnegie?" I'm like, "Oh no," and it was one of my former students.
Oh man.
So yeah, so it's kind of cool actually that one of my former students did that artwork for me.
That's
Made it
awesome.
even more special. So it's cool.
That's very cool. Now, I'm not great at math. So now, are you at the point now where you're not getting kids of kids yet, are you?
Yeah, I've had a few. I've been in education for 30 years. So,
Okay,
those
that's what I said.
kids
I'm
that
not great at
I
math.
first had, they're
Yeah,
they're middle-aged now, because, they were
yeah.
only 10 years younger than me when I was teaching my first group of kids. So, they're mid 40s at this point. So you get some of their kids sometimes. I had a lot
So
of my classmates' kids from Bella Vista that live in the community. So
that's pretty
that's
cool.
cool too. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, so that's interesting because my I've told you this a million times. My wife's a teacher. My sister is also a middle school teacher in San Juan, and they both started off when they were pretty young, I think they plan on teaching as long as they possibly can. So for yourself, though, like you said, you were only 10 years older than some of these students that you started teaching. How is it ever weird to think back as like both a teacher and a coach, that you've been teaching for that long and how much things have changed, COVID and all that stuff, aside, everything else, like how much it's changed and how much you've changed and developed and evolved as a coach and a teacher.
Yeah. It's funny when you say that the COVID thing, that was kind of really an opportunity, like last year coming back from that after being off, to say, you always think about, man, I wish I knew then what I know now. And
Yeah,
I got that opportunity
that's a good
to
point.
start over in knowing a lot more. And I've changed drastically as a coach, first of
Sure.
all. Um, and honestly, I think as a coach, I've grown the most from probably over the last 5 years, from the time I went through the program at Mizzou and knowing enough about coaching that place to really be able to absorb what we were doing. So I think I've probably changed the most in that time span and really refined what I do. And, I can't think of what the name of the coach is, but I think he's a baseball guy. This says, kids talk about how kids have changed so much, and that no, they haven't changed. We've changed. Society has changed. Kids, I mean, they're human beings, so they haven't changed. They're exposed to different things. we treat them differently. So some of the behaviors have changed, but kids are kids. If you're honest with them and they know you care about them, then you can hold them accountable and keep those relationships built in a positive way. That's just huge for their growth. So that part hasn't changed. It's some of the distractions that we deal with now that's changed in that way.
Right. Well, and obviously one of those distractions is social media and every different social media platform. And I always felt like, you've done a great job with staying kind of in the know with all of that stuff. Like I'm not sure how much you enjoy it, but it seems like I see your name on these different platforms with different accounts and things like that. And so I imagine that, I imagine that was an intentional thing that you've done, but it's such a huge benefit when you're dealing with young people because they're all on social media. And so if you have some knowledge of that, even if you're, not as in the know as they are, having some knowledge of it, I feel like it's really crucial to being able to connect with them.
Yeah. I think having the knowledge of how fast that word gets around when you're putting it out there on social media.
Hmm.
I really, on being on Twitter, that was totally getting on there to connect with more coaches and teachers. I really keep that to sports coaching, teaching kind of stuff and
Sure.
who I will follow and interact with. And it's been kind of cool because I've connected with, there was one gentleman that got a hold of me that was thinking about the program at Mizzou. So I kind of talked to him about that. I've connected with other people that either went through before us or after us. So I think it's a great way to connect with people and tap into more knowledge. But it's scary what kids are, there are some deep, dark holes on social media that you can go down. And I think another issue with it, and I was just listening to the last one you did with Butch
Oh yeah.
and talking about like the negativity that comes and it's so easy to sit there and type in something on your phone and hit send and you're anonymous. A lot of people aren't even, they're not using their names. You have no idea who they are and
Right.
just out there to crush people. And I think an impact that's had on our kids is they think that's normal behavior, that it's
Right.
okay to talk to people that way. You have a right to say what you want, and when you're doing it on social media, there's no negative consequence to that whatsoever. You get attention for it. So I think that's a scary part of it. But I do think there are benefits in the way we can connect with others and gain knowledge from other people when it's used in the right way.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. That's probably the most frustrating thing about social media is there's so much good that can come from it, but there's also so many problems that come with it as well if it's not handled correctly. And to your point, when I say it's not handled correctly, you're putting this in the hands of anybody who can log in and has an email address basically and has a phone or a computer. Anybody can get on there. That's the 8-year-old with a phone, or that's the 85-year-old that can barely turn on their computer. You know what I mean? Like everybody in between, they have access to it. And so it is a very bizarre place for
Right.
interaction, but it can be an amazing place. Like you said, you can connect with another coach all the way across the US, or you
Right.
had that dinner with a coach from India. You know what I mean? You
Right.
can stay in contact with that coach if you wanted through, or that
Right.
businessman through social media. So yeah, it's a kind of a catch-22 with the social media thing. But
Yeah.
hopefully, through the work that you're doing and other coaches are doing, that we kind of get that word out saying like, hey, this is a great thing, but let's, use it responsibly.
Yeah. And, even Positive Coaching Alliance does workshops with kids about social media.
Sure.
That's how important it is. And like, if we're going to respect opponents, then how do we treat them on social media? If we're going to respect other teams, then how do we treat them on social media? Yeah,
Sure.
that's an easy smack talking resource that can go back and forth and it can get ugly. Right here in Northern California, we've seen teams shut down basically for seasons because of stuff that was going on social media.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I talked about that really briefly, but there was a situation up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's probably good. I can't remember the name of the school, but that's probably better. But yeah, that whole
Right.
situation,
Right.
that whole situation
Yeah,
that came
I
about was
think
pretty
even the
rough.
point is it's not about the school that it was. It's
Sure.
about the story that was there. And
Right.
there are kids on that team that didn't do anything wrong and lost their season. A
Yeah.
season in high school is big. You don't get a lot of seasons.
Right.
We realize that more as we get older. We
Right.
thought it was going to go on forever. It doesn't go on forever, and you better take advantage of every single time you get to walk out on that field or court or mat. And that was taken away, I'm sure, from some kids that had no responsibility in that whatsoever. And they ended up paying some consequences because of some teammates that weren't thinking through what they were putting out there and how it might impact other people.
Right. Well, and we've talked about this before. I think the thing about that we don't think through is that you just think about, hey, I'm going to put this out there because I think it's funny or I think it's interesting, but you don't realize that there's a bunch of people out there, even if you're a really well-liked person, there's people out there that don't have your best in mind, and they're looking for you to slip up one time. And you take a quick screenshot, you record something that someone posted, and now all of a sudden they have this thing that they can hold over your head. And at the most inopportune time, they just float it out there. We've seen it all the time, and so it's like, you really do have to be really cautious and really aware of what's going on, because like I said, unfortunately, not everybody wants you to succeed or wants you to be the best version of yourself. And so, it's a tough thing. I don't envy you guys as coaches and teachers, because it's just
well, and I think
pain.
especially, high school coaches. And I think part of it is just don't read it,
Yeah,
don't go dig into stuff about yourself, because
sure,
you're going to find something bad. You are. And
sure,
when you care about something, you're passionate about something, a couple of words stick with you. That's when coaches and teachers don't sleep, right? When they're laying there at night wondering, why would somebody say that about me? Or,
sure,
I know I was doing the right thing. Why would you make that comment or zip off that email or whatever the case may be? Those comments hit home. They have an impact on people. And honestly, it's part of why we have a hard time finding coaches anymore, because people don't want to deal with that. They want to coach, but they don't want to get attacked by people. Who wants to get attacked by somebody when you're just trying to do something good for other people? If
sure,
somebody's doing something wrong, let's deal with it face to face and have the discussion and try to make it better. But, zipping off a comment on Facebook or on Instagram or Twitter, or zipping an email off that's got, everybody in the world CC'd on it. That's, the CC line on there is meant to do damage in a lot of cases of nasty emails. You're not dealing with a
sure.
person one-on-one and trying to improve something. And you're starting to CC people on things. You're out to do damage and try to,
Right.
to make something happen to someone else.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're also, if you don't use that CC button correctly, you're just going to annoy everybody. It's one of my pet peeves. The
Right.
the reply all is
Reply
not
all.
meant for, yeah, that should be disabled for most people, because like this is not
Right.
used correctly. That's another podcast, another day.
Be a whole nother episode.
A whole nother episode. I can go off on that for a while. Yeah, well, yeah, that is an interesting part of it. 'Cause like you said, coaches for that reason are not wanting to coach. We've heard from, I think Joe Davidson has written about it a couple of times. Referees there's fewer referees and umpires, because they don't want to deal with all the nonsense that comes from the stands all the time. And I know teachers the same thing, because of all the craziness of the teaching world. Less people are becoming teachers. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but hopefully at some point we can kind of see that cycle, end, and then it kind of go back into a positive direction, because
Right. And I think that goes back to, we're talking about the purpose of why do the podcast. Well, let's get the expectation out there of being positive and being respectful of officials and teammates and opponents and yourself. It's about being respectful to yourself, that I'm not going to put myself out there in that way. I'm going to respect myself more than being negative and attacking people and talking smack on social media, or, being out on the field swearing and cussing and getting after officials. There's got to be a line there. And if we want sports to get back to what they can be, and it's not all bad by any means, it's a little bit of bad. It's just the little bit of bad makes a huge impact. But if we want to get it back to where we want it to be, then we've got to jump in and attack that mission with all we can, because positive people are the ones that are going to make it better. And they're the ones that are right. When I do parent workshops, you're preaching to the choir, because they're the type of parents that want to come to something positive. But I think it's more about giving them permission and telling them you're the one that's right, not the parent in the stand that's yelling at the 13-year-old soccer referee. They're not right. You're right. And telling them that that's not the way we do things here. We're going to be positive and make this a good experience for the kids. Those are the people that are right. And just giving them permission to feel that way is huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and hopefully, like, I think the hope of that too is that it becomes contagious, right? If you have a
Right.
workshop with, 15 parents that have that mentality, they can go out there and affect some change. Then it makes your job, makes your job even easier, right? Because you get to,
Right.
you know, share that message with a bunch of people, and then they get to go do the footwork, which is pretty awesome,
Right.
So
Well, and like what you're doing with this podcast, and I love the idea that, we wear different uniforms, but we're all on the same team. And that's absolutely true. Um, we're all in this together. We wear different uniforms so we can have some competition. But in the long run, you're trying to help make Sacramento a positive sports place by getting those voices that that are positive and they're out there doing it every day and doing it for a long time. You're getting hundreds of years of experience on this show to get that message out there. And that's huge. It's everybody doing their part in communicating. If we have a tool like a podcast, if I have an episode that gets 50 listeners, well, that's 50 people that I just got the message out to. It's not about 10,000 listeners. Like, can I reach some people and start spreading the word? And then they spread the word, and then those people spread the word. And we kind of, goes back to that very, very old shampoo commercial.
sure.
And it just
Sure.
expands.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because that is, at the end of the day, our goal is to, get that word out and just bring as many voices, whether it's someone like yourself who's local to Sacramento, who's been here, who's done their work here, or if it's bringing someone in from out even a different state to provide some knowledge and insight. Our goal is to, just bring more value and knowledge and insight to the home team here in Sacramento. And so that's what I've told people before. Like, I don't have an extensive sports background. I didn't play Division I. I don't have a crazy story. I'm not a speaker like Kevin. But like, I've always felt like my role in this home team is to, like, I love podcasting. I can talk. And so why not? I can kind of be the point guard of this whole thing,
Right.
bring some people in,
Absolutely.
pass the ball to them, and let them, like yourself, just pick your brain and see what kind of value you can bring to the home team. So I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot.
Yeah. No, it's very powerful. It's and very important work to do.
Thank you. Um, so that being said, with your podcast, what's the response been like so far with the positive sports report?
It's been good. The first one, and another blessing of getting a perfect person, getting the superintendent right before he retires and leaves town. But
Sure.
Kent Kern was another Bella Vista guy, but he was also our principal at one time. And he's the one that right away said, yeah, go for it, do it, and got me the backing. So that was, when you can throw the superintendent's face out on, social media as your first episode, then you get people listening. Then I had, on the second episode, I had a teacher and coach from Pasture.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun at the end for him to say, see that, Carnegie and Pasture can get along.
Yeah.
That old Pasture Carnegie rivalry. And we absolutely
Sure.
do. We just wrestled Pasture the other day, and very tight match, as they always are with there. And then one of our wrestlers got hurt to the point where we had to call 911. He's fine.
Really?
He's totally fine.
What happened?
It was precaution. He got slammed and his neck was bothering him. So
Gotcha. Okay.
my assistant coach is a fireman. He's like, let's play it safe here. Let's call 911, get them out here. But those two teams, and coming together and sitting quietly and watching and not flipping out about it. Their team showed up to our school, started helping us set up for the match. When it was done, kind of helped us get things settled and just behaved in a great way. Their coaches were super concerned about our kid and made sure they touched base with me before they left. So yeah, rivalries are great. They can bring out the best in you and push you to work harder. And
Sure.
then they're even better when it's a friendly rivalry, right?
Yeah.
When the kids see coaches being friends in a rivalry, and
Mhm.
and the CAS and BV coaches are the same way, that's just a super powerful thing. But that's part of what I'm hoping to accomplish with the podcast, is that we're getting coaches on, so you hear what they're about and what they're trying to do. Getting former athletes on, as you said, I have Jennifer on coming up, and she was, if not the first girl in our district to wrestle in middle school, one of the first. And she was very good. And
Yeah.
she's very good now. She's number 2 in the country. She travels all over the world.
Pretty good.
Yeah, she's great. And she's, you talk to her, she's very well spoken, very smart, really funny. And she was, that was one of my first ones I had in mind. I'll get a hold of Jennifer. And I emailed her, and she's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it for sure. And then next month, I'm going to have a track coach and PE teacher from Will Rogers. And she also, when I emailed her, I'm like, hey, you know, I'm doing this. What do you think? She's like, oh, absolutely. I totally want to do it. So we have these positive people that are jumping in because they want to help spread the word. They want people to know what we're trying to do and what we're all about in middle school sports and how important it is for our kids. So it's exciting. It's fun to talk to the people I've been able to talk to and guests. You know, when you have people that you know and you know what they're about and you're already friendly with them, it makes it a way easier interview.
Right.
So it's been great. I'm excited about it. I think it'll take a little while to build. You know, middle school people are in and out in 2 years or 3 years. So
Sure.
it's it'll take a little bit to build, but like I said, you don't need 1,000 listeners. You need, you know, 50, 100, 200 listeners to start spreading the word, and it makes a positive impact.
Yeah. No, I love what you're doing, and I'm excited that you're doing it again in a district that I, came through and grew up in. It's cool to see. Like I said, on the other side, I did go to Pasture, I did go to Casa, but it
And
is
see, we
fun,
can get along.
and we can get along. We get along, and I mean it too. I'm not gonna, once we end the recording, I don't go to my wife like, talk to Coach Smith again,
Yeah,
this clown from
that
over at
that guy from
Carnegie.
Carnegie. Yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is when where I lived when I grew up, I actually played little league baseball with a lot of kids from Pasture and Casa. So and then going to BV, I already knew a lot of people on that other team. So it really was a fun rivalry between the two, and it was always friendly. It was never nasty. There were
Yep.
never any fights, none of that. After the game, shake hands, hug each other,
Yeah.
and see each other, during the summer to play, big league or little league or whatever. So it's always been that area. It's close enough where you really know each other, and it makes it that much more fun. It really is a cool thing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm in a similar boat too, because again, growing up in the Orangevale area, I went to Pershing Elementary School, and then most of my friends and classmates went to Carnegie, and I ended up going to Pasteur. And so yeah, you start playing sports and different things when you get to the high school level, and it's like, oh, a ton of people over on the other side too. So as much as you want it to become a crazy rivalry like it is, at the end of the day, it's just a fun thing seeing old classmates, old teammates, and stuff like that on the other side of the field. So yeah, I 100% agree. It's a fun thing. It's
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about being in some of these smaller towns too, is you do have that feel. Anytime I've talked to Coach Casey Taylor when he was at Del Oro, he's like, Loomis is a tight knit community, and so when football's going on, it's not Texas by any means, but it's, for this area, it's pretty close.
Yeah. I'll in the summer and spring, I'll ride out in that area, ride bikes out there in that area, and there are Del Oro signs everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. They're all about that school and all their sports there. Their wrestling programs are very good. But they're good at everything in sports, but it's just that tie. Like, you're a kid growing up, it's like, I'm going to go play football at Del Oro. I'm going to play baseball or softball
Right.
or tennis or swim, whatever it is. Like, I'm going to Del Oro and I'm going to do this. And that's a cool thing. That's the way I grew up. I wanted to go to Bella Vista. I want to play football and baseball and wrestle there. And
Yeah.
that's a fun thing when you're a kid and you're excited about going to that school. It's right down the street.
Well, that's why I love that you have such a close connection with the wrestling group at BV, because it's it's basically, Carnegie's basically a feeder school for Bella Vista. So the majority of your wrestlers, I imagine, are going to BV. So it's not necessarily the same as like the junior football programs that like
Right.
the junior Bulldogs of Folsom or all these different areas. Not the exact same thing, but it's very similar, where I imagine that you guys share certain philosophies, you guys share certain mentalities when it comes to coaching and strategy, technique, all those different things. So it's probably a really nice transition from going to Carnegie as a wrestler and then going to BV as a wrestler. It's just that connection is huge. And I think any school or any two schools that have that is huge. There's a huge benefit there.
Yeah. It doesn't skip a beat at all. Mike Lee, that was there for 19, 20 years as the head coach. And then Garrett Lane, who took over, was his assistant and took over. That was a plan. That was going to happen. That's the way it was going to work.
Yeah.
And the three of us got our masters together in that positive coaching program. So our philosophies are completely tied together in how we work together and help each other. With Mike and with Garrett, I can get on email. Hey, I'm going to teach this today. It's not a strong point of mine. What are your suggestions? And I'll get a, long email back on how to teach it, or, how we have kids do journaling or visualization, that mental part of the game as well, and what our expectations are of kids. Them knowing that we're tied together. Garrett and I, the last 2 summers, had done a middle school wrestling camp together in the district. So kids see us working together, they see how we connect, and it's a totally meshed together program. And then we have a youth program that's meshed in with us too.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. We have a little kids program. They practice at Carnegie a couple nights a week. And then the older group that leads into Carnegie, hopefully, some of them go other places, but they're part of our program. They practice over at Bella Vista a couple nights a week. So we kind of have a whole, coaches meet, we know each other, we interact with each other. So it's a very clean program and very positive. So it's just a great thing.
Awesome. I've just got one more just random question for you before we get you out of here, because we are at that 45-minute mark. Have you had any of your athletes pursue an MMA career?
Not a career in it. We did have this kid didn't actually wrestle for me. He wrestled for Barrett and then went to Bella Vista, but I know him and his family, and he did some MMA stuff, but then he ended up going in the military. But
okay.
I haven't had a lot of it, or any of it that I'm really aware of. That's a whole different beast.
Right.
You have to be willing to get kicked in the head. So
sure.
That's a whole different beast. But no, I haven't really had anybody kind of enter into that area. We'll have kids that they'll do jujitsu. I have a kid on my team now that's a very high level jujitsu player. So they'll do some of that stuff and mix those in. But I haven't really had anybody pursue that as a career, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. It's fun to watch, but yeah, the idea of getting kicked in the head, not great.
Yeah.
Not a fun thing for me.
No,
no, not at all.
I like being conscious when I'm playing my sports.
Hey, me too. I'm good. And I'm like, now I can say I'm too old. I can't do any of that stuff, but yeah, no,
exactly.
It's a while.
Or I would totally, but I'm too old.
Yeah. My kids don't want me to, my wife, all that stuff. Can't do it, guys. That's awesome. So, hey, Coach, anything else you want to say about any of the things you're doing in your podcast? It sounds like you got some really fun guests coming up. I may have to steal your guest list pretty soon. We have to start just
absolutely
getting some suggestions from you for this podcast. But anything else you have coming up? Anything that you want to toss out there, promote, or just share with our audience before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd love to encourage you to listen to the podcast. It's the Positive Sports Report, and that's on Instagram as well. So you can kind of keep up with things are going. We're trying to drop episodes on the 15th of the month, which, kind of gives me a date and gives me time to spread stuff out and get ready. But we have one coming up next week, that one with Jennifer Page, and she's awesome. And then if you are actually a parent or an athlete at our middle schools in the district, we are putting on with Positive Coaching Alliance a dual workshop on March 15th for there'll be a parent section and an athlete section. I'll be doing the parent workshop, and then Mark Smidgen, who's one of our trainers, who's absolutely fantastic. He'll do the triple impact competitor workshop with our middle school kids. So the link for that will go on to our Instagram account when the podcast drops on the 15th, and then your school will have access to that too. So there's some limited spots, but he and I did one of the same type of workshop with Rancho Cordova softball, and it was fantastic and kind of really powerful at the end to let the kids talk to the parents about what they were trying to get out of sports, and some of it was the same and some of it wasn't. So it was a great experience. So that'll be a great workshop. And or if you have any more questions, you can email me at dsmith@sanjuan.edu, and I will fill you in on some information on that too. So there's kind of limited spaces, and we want it to be an athlete with a parent so that they're both going through that experience.
Awesome. And I'm sorry, one more time, what is the date of that workshop?
March 15th. And it'll be at Carnegie Middle School from 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay, perfect. This episode will come out next week. So by the time you guys are hearing this episode, the most recent episode of the Positive Sports Report came out yesterday. And then it sounds like the link should be live at the time of this episode. So perfect.
Correct.
Awesome. I hate when I have to do that, because I have to really start doing some math and some numbers. I'm like, what date? What's today? When's it dropping? I think I said all that accurately. Bottom line is,
yeah, you did.
Just good. Just go follow Coach Smith on everywhere, and then you'll be able to keep up with all the dates. So, and Coach, let me know when all that stuff you start having like promotional material, all that stuff, and we would love to share that on our social media as well. So
awesome. Appreciate that.
yeah, no, hey, we appreciate you. We always appreciate it. This was kind of a last minute thing, so I definitely appreciate you being willing to sit down and chat as always, and just keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you and everything you do in the community. And we're thankful. And we're glad that you're part of our home team.
And I really appreciate you as well. Keep up the good work and keep spreading the word.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.